environmental social justice. We have our returning guest, Mr. Max Berre, who is our in-house technical correspondent. Welcome back, Max.
Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. And today we're talking about rhubarb batteries. That's right, folks. We're talking about vegetables here and flow batteries. So I know absolutely nothing about this. I'm not going to pretend like I know anything about this. Max, take it away.
All right. Well, so this is an interesting and funny story that I had a lot of fun reading about, and every time it comes up, much to the chagrin of the actual scientists behind this, everybody thinks it's completely hilarious and has a field day with it. And the technology behind this is something developed over at Harvard at hold on a sec. Let me just check my notes right quick. At the Harvard School of Engineering, right? So so as much as the press is has had a field day with this, the Harvard School of Engineering would straighten their tie and prefer that this technology be referred to as organic megaflow battery.
Sure.
And by organic, it's rhubarb juice, is what it is.
Okay.
So
how are they getting electricity, renewable energy from a rhubarb? Do you want me to pull up the slides?
Well, I'd like to get the PowerPoint on the screen, so so I can explain the basic technology to you. Okay, so the rhubarb battery is a type of what's called a flow battery, right? And so if we would contrast, next slide, please. So if we would contrast that with a lithium-ion battery, which is your most standard type of rechargeable battery, it's the dominant technology we've got on the market right now. Basically, this is a solid-state battery where you've got your anode, your cathode, and your sort of positive end and negative end. Basically discharges by sending electrons one way, let's say sending electrons out into the circuit and then back into the positive end, and it recharges by taking in electrons in through the negative end. You've got your basic two sides of the battery with your electrolytes separated by a membrane. Now that is your standard battery, not just lithium ion, but your typical solid state battery looks like this, right?
Okay.
So if we go over to the next slide. Your flow battery basically says, okay, now imagine if instead of having solid, so for example, metal, different metals in your battery cell, in your electrochemical cell, imagine if they were liquids. And imagine if we could scale the battery essentially by pumping more electrolyte liquid through the battery. That is what a flow battery does, right?
Okay.
So on one hand, you can charge and discharge the battery in the same way, which is to say that if you look at the red part of the graph, which is your circuit, which we can have also as a stand-in for the entire energy grid out there, right? If you have electrons flowing out from the negative end and back in through the positive end, you are discharging the battery, so like sending electricity out into the grid. And if you are getting are taking electrons into the negative side. You're charging the battery, so you're taking energy from the grid to the battery. So that is the same as a lithium-ion battery. But in addition, what you can do is you can pump. Since it's a liquid, you can pump it out into a tank, pump more of it in, and so you can scale the scale the storage capacity of the battery just by scaling the size of the tanks. So this technology I think is absolutely great, and in the sense that once it's set up, to actually scale is actually super easy. And then it's super easy, super cheap once the setup is done. And so the question then is actually just dealing with the liquids, right? So I guess these electrolytes, it's basically they're either an alkaline or an acid dissolved in water. And so the question is, can you have an alkaline or an acid dissolved in water, which is safe, which is cheap, and which can be pumped around quickly, right? Obviously you can have for 90 bucks. Obviously you can have you can have acids such as like lemon juice or something, which has some sort of charge capacity, which has some sort of electrochemical capacity, but not that much. On the other hand, you could have some extremely powerful acids, which might be extremely toxic and very unsafe. So that's basically the challenge of flow batteries.
Okay. Should I go to the next slide?
Looks like it froze. Oh no.
You're
There
back.
we go. Okay. So so basically so if you go so when you look this up, for example, if you go to the last page's diagram came from flowbatteryforum.com, right? So when you read around about this, what you find is that for electrolytes, you might get iron and chromium, which is obviously like if you have dissolved solutions of that's where chromium's obviously a toxic heavy metal, right? So you may have a problem there. Vanadium, which because it has different states of valency, you can have two different states of valency on the two different battery. And the Obama administration did some research on the on vanadium flow batteries in 2015, or they did a press conference about it in 2015. So presumably they did years worth of research on this this battery technology, because the Obama administration was also looking for energy storage technologies which could be used to accompany these intermittent renewable energy, generates when it's sunny, not when it's cloudy type situations, right? So as part of the infrastructure, they were basically thinking, right, well, we could scale, we could definitely scale this to the size of energy generation or of an industrial scale. Obama administration was interested in that, and so they did a press release in 2015. Okay, and the last thing on the list there is quinones, which is an organic. That's an organic compound. Next slide, please. All right, so there we go. So quinones, it's an organic compound. It's refined. It's refined out of rhubarbs, out of rhubarb. Now, when the news first broke about this battery in 2017, the engineers over at Harvard were interviewed about it, and And what they said is, well, most plants have energy needs, and they basically have the need to take in terms of photosynthesis, right? They have the need to have chemicals which have some electrochemical properties in order to get sunlight and turn that into chemical energy. So it turns out that some of them have compounds which help out their photosynthesis, which have electrochemical properties such that they're useful to put in a battery. And so while they were being interviewed in 2017, they said, well, rhubarb is the best we found so far, but we've got several others. Don't get used to the name. That might change. But if you were to Google it today, indeed, it's all over the place.
Yes.
That's
what I did. I Googled it. And I was like, I don't know what
it's fun to read about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's unusual. It's something I had not really considered. Would you like me to go to the next slide?
Well, I think that's it, actually. That's
that's it.
The technology is explained. So yeah, if you were to Google around, yeah, I'm not aware that they found any better or tastier vegetable that goes into food. I mean that goes into energy storage. So that's where things went from 2017. But it's definitely the case that 𝑰𝒊𝒏𝒈. The guys which are about energy and energy storage and renewable energy. They've got a page all about. They've got a page about it. IEEE.org. I mean, right? So they've got a page about the rhubarb battery.
Can I just ask a couple questions?
Yeah.
Just
absolutely. Sorry, it's been me talking this whole time.
I know.
Go ahead.
One of the things, because this is relatively new to me. So a couple things just from watching your presentation and everything you said. Can I make the assumptions that there's no lithium in this, therefore no mining of lithium? Since it's not a lithium-ion battery,
Correct.
probably not cobalt. So we're using less precious metals, less rare earth elements, less mining. It's liquid, so it can be stored indefinitely because, lithium-ion batteries will eventually lose their charge, as with any solid-state battery. It'll just kind of deplete. So this is liquid, can hold the charge indefinitely, I'm assuming, and can be easily scaled up or down depending on your needs. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know how indefinitely it might be able to hold a charge. I mean, we're talking about organic compounds, right? So one thing about them being organic and presumably less toxic and biodegradable is that they might get biodegraded, right? It might ferment, for example.
That could be good.
which as hilarious as that sounds, like when you're dealing with organic compounds, they may suffer organic processes.
Yes.
There's in energy storage and renewable energy, there's no such thing as a silver bullet per se.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about getting away from toxic heavy metals, which present maybe some problems to the environment, both on the side of their mining and construction, and also later on the side of their disposal. I would say that organic based flow batteries really shine specifically in this area.
Okay.
That being said, they might not be able to have the energy density, right? So there's no way you'd be able to carry one that fits inside your phone, for example. That may never happen.
True. Yeah.
But on the other hand, we can scale them up quite large. So I guess the idea that I guess the idea that we may go from having, a building having its energy storage needs met by having a couple of large tanks in its utility basement, like maybe in the first floor, second floor basement, or to have like maybe a wind farm out there with like several automobile-sized tanks stacked up one alongside each other. That those are two possible like industrial scales.
Yeah.
So there are some definite advantages.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I think, I mean, first of all, I'm all about energy diversification. I believe we should be exploring every possible avenue in addition to electricity, other than petroleum, obviously. So we do need other resources, and being biodegradable or an organic is kind of awesome. I like the fact there's no precious metals really being mined or used. That's really necessary for the renewable energy we're going to need. We don't have enough rare earth elements. We don't have enough metals. And digging it up out of the earth is really not a great option.
Yeah, I like this idea too. Also the idea. I think that, I have the impression that in order for the let's say, in order for the energy landscape of tomorrow to be really, reliably renewables dependent and renewables involved and renewables related, I think the best thing that could happen is that, that diversification goes so far that there's really some way that pretty much everyone can participate in the renewable economy in some way.
Yes.
And so basically what we can imagine with flow batteries that come out of essentially refined rhubarb juice is that you can imagine, for example, you can imagine sort of agricultural sectors and agricultural farms producing this kind of producing the juice, and also you can imagine agronomists sort of working on more and more potent strains of rhubarb, basically.
That'd be very
going into
cool.
the future, so that we could say that a smaller number of plants or a smaller number of hectares worth of rhubarb might yield more and more gallons of electrolyte.
And we also have vertical farming that's becoming more and more popular, where you don't even need the soil and you can just build up, and you can have multitudes of rhubarb in a very small footprint.
Right. Also, I want to say, seen from here in the EU, one thing is that that there's quite some strict rules in the EU, which most people support, right? Like, I definitely would vote for it. Also, there's quite some strict rules about genetically modified organisms happening in the agrarian sector. So in the view of the EU, they have quite strict rules about genetically modified plants going into the food supply, right?
Yeah.
But this is plants going into the energy supply, and the energy grid's not going to care that the rhubarb juice is not made according to the German beer purity law of 1516.
Yeah,
we'll put it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you.
They're not going to.
Did I lose?
I think the view on genetic modification of plants to be used for energy or to be used for things other than food, the regulatory space is wide open for that.
Oh, I agree with you. And no, I think this is actually extremely knowledgeable that people learn about this. This is all the time we have for today, unfortunately, folks. But most importantly, please check out flow batteries, especially rhubarb batteries. I never knew this was a thing until I talked to Max. Max, you are on top of all the technology, and
very fun to read about.
But you're always on the forefront. I'm always contacting you, like, oh, have you heard about this yet? I'm like, no, I don't know what that is. So keep doing what you're doing. You're definitely leading the charge in alternative fuels. And on that, folks, we will talk to you soon. Max, thank you for logging in all the way from, are you still in the south of France? I think I lost you.
Still in the south of France.
I know. I'm so jealous of that. One day I'll make it.
Yes, in the south of France.
On that, guys, thank you so much. We will see you next time. Have a wonderful day. And Max, thank you again. This is fantastic.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.